Everyone, I am here to bring you the bad news. Himiko is dead. This character is really bad. You all played Honkai Impact. This is probably the saddest news you'll hear all week. This character is dead. So, let's explain why exactly she is as bad as she is. She is comparable to a 4-star in the game. Well, actually, this 4-star is better than Himiko, which is crazy. I can't believe I'm saying that. So, Himiko is only good at farming in the game. Now, as you all know, I play with the character. I ended up getting her in the closed beta. I have videos on the character already. If you want to check them out, they're on the channel. We played with her a little bit. We did some battles and stuff like that. I actually took her to Simulate a Universe and she performed poorly. However, with farming, she's really, really good. You put her with Herta, spin to lose, the comp I like to call, because that comp doesn't scale well to the late game. I mean, you just do exactly what I just said. You spin to kill everything, but the character, that team just drops off pretty much around, I want to say late game. Now, however, I'm sure with better gear, you can make that team and these characters work better, but from just a base standpoint, it's not looking pretty good, boys. Now, to brush up your knowledge, for all you that don't know how Himiko works, she's an AoE damage dealer. You go in, you use her like you use any other AoE damage dealer like Herta, right? You use those two together most of the time to cover the different element weaknesses of the boss, right? Or whoever you're fighting in that case. I typically use them both because they have great synergy with one another when you're farming. But if you're not farming, you want to use Himiko for just a general DPS character, you would use her with Herta most of the time. You can also use Himiko with Asta. Asta gives an elemental damage buff, an attack buff to Himiko, but also the other allies. So I like to pair her up with Asta because of Asta's 4-star artifact, which gives, I don't know why I killed it, I still call them artifacts. 4-star light cone. Like gives a elemental damage buff to whatever ally type is the same as hers. So the problem is with Himiko, you want to kill enemies so that you get resets and you get more energy so you can get your ult again. However, the problem is you have to use this character with Ting Yun. Ting Yun is a very nice buffer for Himiko. Those two work together really well. I've been using Himiko with Ting Yun most of the time and it helps me get my ult, whenever I don't have enough to get it, which by the way, I think the multiplier, for what it's worth, while having 120 energy costs is really bad. I mean, like, if we're talking this energy cost, it's comparable to Seal. But the problem is, it's like, Seal does damage and she gets an additional turn when she kills the enemy. So she works like an AoE damage dealer too because of the reset. However, Himiko is just AoE damage, but the multiplier is so low. Now, I understand how AoE damage dealers work in this game. They don't want to have another Epic 7 problem where you have characters like Landy doing more, single target damage as an AoE damage dealer than single target damage dealers. There is nothing wrong with having PvE only characters, but this is a PvE game. PvE only game. There's no PvP in this game. So having a very weak character like Himiko is very disappointing. And I really do wish they would buff this character because I know a lot of you want to play with this character. But this is the worst character on the standard banner by far. And I'm not even joking with you. Clara has AoE damage, but Clara also has single target massive damage with her counterattack. Support gives a very nice shield to the whole team, so he's always viable in all types of content. Then you have Yang Qing, who is a very nice single target damage dealer, especially against ice bosses. He performs best there, better than any other character here against ice bosses. Then you have Bailu, a very nice lightning healer, an actual damage buffer because she buffs attack eidolons and she also buffs damage overall with her light cone, while also giving healing and having a revive. So she's like the best future-proof character here by far. Then you have Bronya, which we all know how strong she is. She does her thing. She pushes up the CR of an ally, and that ally takes a turn and does massive damage because of the buffs she provides. And then Welt, this character delays turns. He slows the enemy. He has the strongest slow in the game. That alone allows you to constantly lap the enemy and take turns when you probably shouldn't be able to do that. This character is really strong. But then you have Himiko, and this character looks good. I mean, no one's going to deny that, but she just doesn't perform that well. Now, I wish this character received some sort of tweak. When I lost my 50-50 to Himiko, I was devastated. This character sucks really bad. She's really hard to make work whenever you're doing harder content in the game because she just doesn't keep up. She doesn't have much damage. Her shield break isn't that good because you need stacks from your passive to have more shield break. So this character is very, very hard to make work whenever you're fighting bosses, right? You always want to use her E skill because if you don't use her elemental skill, then you don't do much damage because her normal attack doesn't do anything really, comparative to a single target damage dealer. And so the problem lies with this character just being bad. Now, with farming, she's pretty darn good, but you can use any character in farming and make them work, right? You can use Yang Qing in farming to make them work. You can use Clara in farming to make them work. You can use DPS Bronya in farming and make her work. When you have enough damage on your characters, you're able to use them in farming because it's rather easy. You can farm with any character in the game. You can probably farm with Jetpart as a solo, standalone, maybe not. Maybe so. Depends on how strong your Jetpart is. But then you have Himiko, and the best she's at is AoE damage against, little wasp bugs in the game that I showed in a previous video. That just doesn't do enough. So when you lose your 50-50 and you get her, you might be happy because you get to finally play with Himiko because you didn't get to play with her in Honkai Impact. And sure, that's great and all, but this character doesn't really do much aside from that, looking good on your account. Now, if we compare Himiko to a character like Kafka, who kind of does the same thing as Himiko. Kafka has AoE damage, and she also has damage over time. That damage over time is really, really good whenever you're fighting bosses, because it stacks on the enemy, and it does damage over time. That's damage you do to the enemy whenever the enemy takes a turn. Kafka can also detonate those dots, which then does the damage right then and there. So that's more damage on top of the damage she already does with her kit. Himiko doesn't have dots, makes her not, functional in a single target boss setting, right? And she doesn't look as, in my opinion, okay? In my opinion, she doesn't look as good as Kafka, but that is unrelated. I shouldn't have even brought that up. That's just Kumuratoshi talking. And so it is really disappointing. I really do genuinely hope that Himiko receives some sort of tweak, because as of right now, why would you care about getting her as a farming character when you can farm with any other character in the game? You can put 4 DPS characters in your team and farm that way. You don't have to have Himiko to effectively farm in the game. I could use Seal, Bronya, and 2 other characters and farm that way. But as it stands right now, what's the purpose of Himiko even existing? Because then you have fire DPSs that shield break better than Himiko generally, right? Asta. She's my favorite 4-star character in the game. Asta is great. You all know how much I love this character. Whenever I get the chance, I have to hype her up because she is a very, very strong 4-star character. She provides a team-wide speed buff, which no other character does that in the game. That is really, really strong for any composition you use, aside from a team of Clara. With Clara, you probably would never use this character because that's counterproductive for how you would want to use Clara in the first place. But Clara, that character gets extremely strong with constellations, gets extremely strong with her light cone, does massive AoE damage and massive single target damage, and also has built-in damage mitigation. And so I leave you off with this. With Himiko being the worst character you can get from the actual standard banner, beginner banner, you'll use her in the beginning of the game and it'll feel fine and all, but then you'll hit a plateau when you're doing general content in the game where you feel like this character doesn't do enough. Now, I will say one thing, right? This game is very different from Genshin Impact. You will feel when you're not doing any damage, and you will feel when you are doing damage. It fucking shows. You can't dodge, so you need heals or you need a shield. Enemies have a lot of HP. Like, I'm talking massive amounts of HP, especially early game. You don't really do too much damage. You don't crit, right? You don't crit on most of the characters. That alone is way less DPS. In Genshin Impact, you can play Ganyu and you can shoot the enemy on the head and crit that way. But you can't do that in this game. So you rely on stats. Everything in Honkai Star Rail is a stat check. But Himiko has the worst multipliers, pretty much any character. Now, Grim Row, if I'm saying that person's name right, their YouTube channel, they did make this chart where they did 7 turns of a simulation comparing the damage of each individual character in the game. Himiko as a single target is one of the worst. I would say she's worse than Serval because Serval is generally buffed in a team with a character like Sampo and Kafka because Sampo provides the actual dot increase damage increase on dots, which Serval benefits from. So this is way more damage than Himiko, for instance, right? And so Himiko is comparable to main character physical, which, we get this character for free. Look at AoE damage, and Himiko does way better, but you need a lot of stats on this character. You need a lot of stats. And when you reach that point where you have a lot of stats on this character, you're generally going to do less damage than other characters overall. You can see Serval was even higher than Himiko. So a 4-star character we get for free in the game is stronger than a 5-star mascot of the Honkai universe that was dead in the previous game, so people didn't get to play with her, but they get to play with her in this game, but she's weak. A 4-star we get for free is stronger than this 5-star character. What the fuck are they smoking? What are they cooking, bro? What are they cooking? Like, what is Hoyo actually cooking? You get this character, you're gonna be disappointed because she is bad? What is Hoyo cooking? Like, what's the purpose of having a 5-star be worse than a 4-star? I'm a little disappointed that Himiko ended up being the way she is. I hope this character gets some tweaks before the release of the game, but I will say one thing. With this character being as weak as she is, all the way till the 3rd CBT, it's not looking good, boys. This character probably will be as weak as this during the launch of the game. Of course, though, at the end of the day, you should value your enjoyment when it comes to any game, right? Waifu over meta. I am that kind of person. So despite, if I was a fan of Himiko, I would definitely play with the character anyways, even if she's weak. I just don't like the character that much, honestly. Thank you for watching and have a nice rest of your day.